He didn't talk about presidents, politics, war, or power. He spoke just one name, Kate Middleton, and the world paused. In one of his final appearances, Pope Francis transformed a quiet speech at the Vatican into a global moment of astonishment. What began as an address about climate change became an emotional and deeply personal tribute, one no one could have predicted. He described her as a beacon of hope, a woman of courage, dignity, and grace. But the question lingered, why her, why then, and why would a pope, known for rarely acknowledging royalty, choose Kate as the subject of his final public praise? It wasn't ceremonial. It wasn't superficial. It was honest and heartfelt. His voice broke as he commended her resilience, her quiet endurance through illness, and her steady presence amid uncertainty. This came just days after the world watched Kate's brave video revealing her cancer diagnosis. She held back tears, but millions wept for her. What truly stunned people wasn't only his admiration, it was the urgency and closeness in his voice. It wasn't the tone of a distant spiritual figure, it was the voice of someone who knew something others didn't. Knew the pain hidden behind royal walls. Understood the silence that masked a deeper struggle. And within his tribute was a subtle hint, easy to miss but impossible to ignore once noticed. He said, "Hope walks quietly even when we don't recognize her doctors." That single line sent shockwaves behind the scenes. Journalists began investigating. Sources in the medical world started talking. Eventually, a revelation surfaced: the same elite Italian medical team that had treated Pope Francis had also performed surgery on Kate Middleton. Neither the Vatican nor the palace confirmed it. Officials offered no explanation. But insiders were convinced this wasn't mere coincidence. It was coordinated. A hidden collaboration between the Vatican and the Crown. The Pope's final address was more than a tribute. It was a sign, a goodbye, and a deeply personal confession. While the public wondered about Kate's absence and health, the Pope had been quietly involved. He didn't just admire her, he prayed for her, consulted doctors about her, and, as his life neared its end, he chose to use his last strength to honor her, not for her title, but for her courage in silence, her fight in the shadows, without praise or attention. No one saw it coming. No one was ready. But that one gesture reframed everything. This wasn't merely a moment shared between two public figures. It was a glimpse into private suffering and a strange but powerful connection between a dying religious leader and a struggling royal. What the world didn't know was how deeply their lives had quietly intersected. The Pope's tribute wasn't admiration from afar. It was recognition, deep, knowing recognition. His words were carefully chosen. Not symbolic, but coded. And for those who truly listened, it became clear, he was sharing a truth the world was never meant to hear. That truth unraveled quietly at first. A single reference to doctors triggered a wave of behind-the-scenes inquiries. Rumors began to surface in Italy's medical community. The same specialists who had cared for Pope Francis in his final days had also traveled to London, not for diplomatic reasons, but for an undisclosed surgery. Their patient? Kate Middleton. Her name had never been linked to the Vatican before. Why would the Princess of Wales receive care from the Pope's own medical team? Why had this never been made public? Why so much secrecy? Journalists pushed for answers. Spokespeople dodged. But the overlapping timelines, the Pope's declining health and Kate's mysterious operation, couldn't be ignored. Here were two of the most private, protected figures in the world, both facing serious medical challenges, both treated by the same doctors. This wasn't just a matter of chance. It was deliberate, quiet, and deeply intentional. And if it was intentional, why? Why would the Vatican discreetly embed itself in one of the most sensitive royal health matters? Why would Buckingham Palace allow it? Questions swirled. Was this an act of spiritual solidarity? A matter of faith and privacy? Or was something else being safeguarded, something more fragile than health, perhaps a reputation? because suddenly, it became evident the institutions had been in contact. The Vatican and the Crown, two historically discrete, powerful entities, had formed an alliance, silent and effective. And only when the Pope broke his silence did the surface begin to crack. From that moment, speculation erupted. Could there be a long-standing friendship between members of the royal family and the Vatican? Had Kate's condition been far more serious than publicly known? Was her life at greater risk than anyone had admitted? Had the Vatican intervened not just as a medical partner, but as a kind of guardian? Whatever the truth, the impact was enormous. Two of the most influential forces on earth had come together to quietly protect a woman in crisis. No press releases. No leaks. Only stillness, until Pope Francis, in his final days, chose to speak. Not everything. Just enough. To the general public, it may have seemed like a moving tribute. But for those watching closely, it was something far more profound, a handoff in the dark. A message intended only for those who understood the fire. To grasp why Pope Francis chose to speak about Kate, we need to go back to where her story began. Before the fame. Before the cameras. Before the titles. Catherine Middleton was a quiet girl from Berkshire. She didn't grow up in castles or under royal spotlights. She was raised in a modest household by two hardworking parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, who both worked for British Airways. One was a dispatcher, the other cabin crew. Their lives were ordinary, but they raised Catherine with something priceless: stability, humility, and the reminder to stay grounded no matter where life led. As their family business, Party Pieces, grew in success, their lifestyle evolved, but their values did not. Catherine remained calm, thoughtful, and quietly disciplined. She joined the Brownies, studied at local schools, and helped with the family business. The world hadn't noticed her yet, but those around her recognized a calm strength. Not showy, but real. Her story took a turn when she made an unexpected choice. After being accepted to the University of Edinburgh, Catherine changed her plans during her gap year and enrolled at St. Andrews instead, just months after it was announced that Prince William would attend the same school. Later, some would accuse her of plotting her way into royalty. But those who knew her knew the truth: she wanted a strong education and real experiences. What she found was something far more complicated. Their first meeting wasn't magical. No cinematic moment. Just a shared breakfast in a college cafeteria. He was the prince. She was the quiet girl from reading. She blushed. He nodded. Then they moved on. But destiny doesn't shout. It whispers. And slowly, steadily, their bond formed. They became friends first, walking through campus, studying in silence, exchanging subtle glances in crowded halls. Then came the turning point: a charity fashion show. One black dress. One surprised prince. And from that moment on, the way he looked at her changed. But this was no fast-moving fairy tale. Their relationship was careful, private. For 2 years, it remained hidden from the press. No announcements. No headlines. Just a quiet connection, building behind ancient stone walls. What's most extraordinary about Catherine's story is not that she became a princess, but that her past gave no indication of it. She wasn't born into it. She wasn't molded for it. She grew into it, on her own terms. She wasn't chasing royalty, she became it, simply by being herself, resilient, loyal, observant. She didn't demand her place in the monarchy, and she earned it quietly, without spectacle, through character rather than lineage. But even fairy tales have shadows, and for Catherine, those shadows had only just begun to emerge. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth or celebratory, it would be filled with betrayals, heartbreak, and the constant scrutiny of a world that never looked away. These trials, however, would help shape the woman Pope Francis would one day call a beacon of hope. Royal life may appear glamorous from the outside: glistening jewels, elegant gowns, and applause. Yet within the palace walls, Catherine Middleton was grappling with burdens far heavier than titles. In 2007, the illusion shattered. Prince William ended their relationship with a single phone call. Years of loyalty and quiet sacrifices ended in silence. The media descended, headlines screamed dumped, and cameras chased her through London. Still, Kate didn't crumble. She didn't lash out or retreat. Instead, she stepped out of her home with her head held high, showing a calm dignity that the world would come to admire, especially when she had every reason to fall apart. The breakup wasn't just a personal blow, it was her first public trial. Her pain became public entertainment. But Kate didn't respond with words, she responded with silence. While William celebrated his newfound freedom in nightclubs, she quietly went to Dublin. Never scandalous, never dramatic, just visible enough to show she was still standing, still strong. And it made a difference. When William saw her again, he saw not just the woman he knew but her calm strength and quiet confidence, and he came back. Their reunion wasn't flashy or romanticized, it was thoughtful, mature, quietly powerful. When they re-emerged as a couple, they weren't just partners in love but equals in purpose. That silent time apart forged a resilience no public moment ever could. So in 2010, when William proposed during a quiet trip to Kenya, carrying his mother's sapphire ring, it wasn't just a proposal, it was a return, a reconciliation. When their engagement was made public, the world didn't just cheer, they breathed a sigh of relief. Catherine, once dismissed as Wady Katie, was now the future queen. Their 2011 wedding captivated the world. Billions watched her enter Westminster Abbey with grace and poise. But as the world gushed over her appearance, they missed what she was truly doing. She wasn't chasing attention, she was absorbing everything, learning quietly. Unlike Diana, who had been thrust into the spotlight, Catherine moved slowly and cautiously. She took on only 34 engagements in her first year. Critics called her lazy, assuming she was hiding behind the palace walls. But in truth, she was preparing, studying royal customs, learning the media landscape, and building the emotional strength her predecessors lacked. Her silence wasn't submission, it was a calculated approach. That quiet discipline would soon become her biggest asset. While the public underestimated her, Catherine was carefully redefining what it meant to be royal. She waited, watched, and learned. Then came motherhood, and with it, another bold move. Catherine didn't just want the crown, she wanted her child in her arms. In a palace shaped by tradition, this decision upended expectations. When Prince George was born in 2013, the world expected a typical royal routine, a staff, photo ops, a swift return to duty. But Catherine chose differently. She left the palace with her newborn and returned to her parents' home in Bucklebury. No royal nurses, no spectacle, just a mother learning her role without help. It wasn't rebellion, it was quiet defiance. She vanished from public view for 6 weeks. When she returned, she wasn't just a duchess, she was a mother first, and she made that clear. She didn't rely on tradition. She and William took turns with night feedings, changed diapers, comforted their baby. Not for show, not to prove a point, because that was who she was. This wasn't retreat, it was a transformation. Catherine balanced motherhood with duty, attending royal events, state dinners, and foreign tours while raising her children. The world noticed. She didn't disappear, she evolved. She appeared at official functions with the poise of a royal and the exhaustion of a new mom. Her style grabbed headlines, but it was her quiet strength that stood out. She navigated 2 worlds, one steeped in tradition, the other rooted in family. What set Catherine apart wasn't her image, it was her substance. She understood the power of a photograph, but she valued silence even more. While tabloids chased gossip, she shaped her own narrative, a modern, emotionally aware royal who knew her children better than her advisors. Her decision to mother differently wasn't about rejecting royal life, it was about reshaping it. As George grew, and Charlotte followed, Catherine's commitment only deepened. She did school runs, stood on the sidelines at games, shared authentic family photos, all while continuing her official duties, whether high-profile or under the radar. Her visits to Canada and the US were celebrated, and she effortlessly moved between being a hands-on mother and a poised royal. But none of it was performative. Catherine was building something more meaningful than a public image. She was laying the foundation for the monarchy's future, one bedtime at a time. In doing so, she achieved what even Diana found difficult. She made motherhood central to royal identity, not as a symbol, but as a standard. But it was her quiet, behind-the-scenes work that made the deepest impact. No cameras, no press, no palace announcements, just Catherine, moving alone and purposefully into places most royals avoided. She visited shelters that smelled of despair and hospices filled with sorrow. In these unglamorous spaces, her title didn't matter. And that's where she did something extraordinary. She listened. She sat beside children in pain, held grieving mothers, and brought gifts instead of speeches. What the public only learned later, after her cancer diagnosis, after the Pope's recognition, was that she had quietly visited 12 homeless shelters across London, without press or publicity. At each place, she stayed. She talked to staff, listened to the stories of systemic failures, sat with broken families. She asked thoughtful questions and offered presence over performance. Then she left, unnoticed, because it wasn't about being seen. It was about seeing others. Her work extended beyond homelessness. Catherine committed herself to complex, often overlooked issues: early childhood development, mental health, and addiction recovery. She didn't just lend her name, she immersed herself. She met with experts, caregivers, psychologists, and educators to learn the realities of trauma. And that effort showed. Over time, her projects became more focused, more personal, and more impactful. She launched meaningful initiatives, formed alliances with organizations, and built safe environments for vulnerable mothers and children. Yet, she remained out of the spotlight. She never used pain as a photo opportunity. Her actions weren't driven by royal duty or protocol, they stemmed from personal conviction. Quiet, steady conviction. When Pope Francis offered his final tribute, he didn't mention her charity events or public statements. Instead, he spoke of her hidden efforts, the compassion carried out away from cameras. He acknowledged what the media missed, what official press teams never reported. He saw what few others did. True leadership doesn't always announce itself, it often moves quietly. For Catherine, that quiet changed lives. Not because she wanted recognition, but because she believed those most overlooked deserved to be heard the loudest. Her style challenged traditional ideas of royalty. She wasn't seeking sainthood, she simply wanted to make a difference. And by doing so, she reshaped what influence looks like, not through headlines or speeches, but with gentle, steady presence. Yet silence has its price. When Catherine vanished from public view, the very silence that once protected her began to turn. Rumors began swirling. Speculation gained momentum. The same public that once admired her calm started to question her absence. Was she hiding something? Had something gone wrong? Was the palace no longer in control? Gradually, the steadfast support surrounding her started to fade, just as the truth was on the verge of emerging. Where is Kate? That question dominated news cycles, trended across social platforms, and captured the world's attention. In January 2024, the palace announced that the Princess of Wales had undergone abdominal surgery and would be stepping back from her duties until Easter. But after that brief statement, nothing. No images, no sightings, no updates. Just silence. And in that void, the world did what it always does, it speculated, filled in the blanks, and spun narratives. Whispers on forums and in tabloids quickly grew into widespread frenzy. Some claimed she was in a coma. Others suggested complications from surgery or even cosmetic procedures gone wrong. Some feared something far more serious, something being hidden from the public. Theories multiplied rapidly. As the silence stretched on, the noise only grew louder. Then came the photo. On Mother's Day, the palace released an image of Catherine with her 3 children. At first, it brought relief. She was present, smiling. But almost immediately, viewers spotted inconsistencies. The shadows didn't align. Her sleeve looked oddly folded. A child's zipper appeared unnatural. Within hours, the photo was dubbed Kategate. News outlets withdrew it. Photography experts questioned whether it had been altered, or even artificially generated. The image, meant to calm rumors, only fueled them further. Trust in the royal family took another hit. Curiosity turned to outrage. People wanted answers, immediately. Then, after months of silence, Catherine finally spoke. On March 22, 2024, a video surfaced without warning. No fanfare, just her, pale, subdued, and devastatingly real. Calmly, she looked into the camera and spoke with a quiet strength that froze the world. The rumors had missed the truth completely. What she revealed was far more human. After her surgery, doctors had discovered cancer. She was undergoing preventative chemotherapy. Her voice was steady, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she didn't have to raise it. Every word carried its own weight. She talked about fear, about resilience, about explaining the situation gently to her children. She thanked the medical teams and the many who respected her need for privacy. She didn't scold anyone for the speculation, it wasn't necessary. Her presence alone quieted the chaos. And the world listened. The reaction was immediate. Doubt turned to compassion. Support replaced suspicion. But beneath the sympathy came something more profound, a realization of how far we had strayed, chasing conspiracies while she battled something deeply personal in silence. Among those watching that video was Pope Francis. Nearing the end of his own life, speaking with increasing difficulty, he found purpose in one final public act. He didn't address politics, theology, or war. He didn't summon leaders or outline grand visions. Instead, he chose to speak about her. On June 7, 2024, during a Vatican address meant to focus on climate change, the Pope stopped mid-sentence. He changed course entirely. In a tone full of sincerity, he named Catherine, Princess of Wales, as a symbol of hope in a world where hope felt scarce. It was a stunning moment. The Pope, known for his restraint and rare personal praise, set aside formality for something far more intimate. He described her not as a royal figure, but as a woman of resilience, grace, and quiet strength. He referenced her diagnosis, her composure, and her refusal to let public pressure overshadow private pain. And then, almost as a sacred whisper, he confirmed what many suspected: the same medical team that treated him in Italy had also cared for Catherine in London. The audience fell silent. This wasn't mere admiration. This was shared struggle. Shared silence. Shared belief in the strength of the human spirit. He spoke not as a pontiff observing royalty, but as a man recognizing another soul navigating darkness. He did something remarkable. He called for mercy, not from above, but from each of us. He asked the press to ease up, to show compassion, to recognize that cruelty can hinder healing. He warned that media scrutiny can do damage even deeper than disease. He returned to her mission. He uplifted her mental health advocacy, her quiet visits to shelters, her early childhood work. He cited a 35% rise in cancer screenings across the UK following her announcement, calling it a miracle, not of medicine, but of bravery. One voice had mobilized a country, not with slogans, but with sincerity. Not with power, but with truth. He didn't merely ask people to admire her. He asked them to follow her lead. To give, to support, to care, not in her name, but in her example. His final blessing wasn't about tradition. It was deeply personal. As his chapter closed, he recognized that hers was still unfolding. Catherine isn't just surviving. She's transforming the meaning of royalty, softly, powerfully, without fanfare. She continues her treatment away from cameras and royal events. The public no longer demands constant visibility, because something stronger has taken its place, respect. She makes occasional appearances, moving more slowly, speaking more gently, but carrying a presence that asks for no applause. Every quiet moment she offers is a reminder, she's here. She hasn't stepped away. She's stepped forward, on her terms. This isn't the monarchy of the past. This is something new. A kind of leadership built not on spectacle, but on perseverance. Catherine has touched millions, not through flashy words or sweeping change, but through calm, quiet resilience. She's shown that real leadership doesn't always stand at a podium. Sometimes, it simply shows up. Sometimes, it tells the truth when staying silent would be easier. She's become a symbol, not of wealth, but of endurance. Not of royalty, but of perspective. Her story, marked by heartbreak, pressure, illness, and grace, has become a modern reflection of human strength. Like Pope Francis, her power isn't in what she says loudly. It's in how she chooses to simply be present.